If everything collapsed now, would you know where to run? Imagine sirens echoing, nets falling, supermarkets being looted, and streets gripped by panic. The zombie apocalypse has begun. And if you live in a large metropolis, surrounded by skyscrapers, chaotic traffic, and millions of people, I'm sorry to tell you, you're in the worst place possible. Giant cities like São Paulo, New York, or Tokyo would become true urban hells in the first minutes of the outbreak. Dense population, few escape, routes, chaos in hospitals, and an army of infected people appearing at every corner. The question is not whether it will happen, but when. And when it happens, you need to be prepared. In today's video, you will learn about the 10 cities that would become death traps at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse, and understand why these metropolises, despite being modern, are the worst place to survive. Because in the end, what will kill you is not just the zombies, but the place where you chose to live. And if you want to escape this dark fate, the first thing you need to do is prepare yourself. And here, every week, I show you how. So subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications, because in the zombie apocalypse, information is survival. Leave a like so this video can reach more people before chaos truly arrives. And answer me in the comments, would your city be safe, or would it be among those 10 that would turn into hell in the first few days? I want to know where you live, and if you've thought of an escape plan. Your comment may help other survivors plan too. Let's put together the survival map together before it's too late. São Paulo, Brazil. São Paulo, the financial heart of Latin America, would also be one of the biggest nightmares at the beginning of a zombie apocalypse. With more than 12 million inhabitants in the city alone, and almost 22 million in the metropolitan region, the largest metropolis in the southern hemisphere would turn into a true minefield of infection in a matter of hours. Now imagine this. The outbreak begins in a crowded downtown subway station. People screaming, running in all directions, not knowing if they are running away from the zombies or heading straight towards them. São Paulo is controlled chaos even on normal days. In a collapse scenario, everything collapses at once. Traffic is blocked, subway lines are stopped, communication is cut off. Thousands of people trapped on avenues such as Marginal Tietê and Radial. Lest with no possibility of escape, hospitals, already overcrowded in normal times, would not be able to deal with even the first infected people. In less than 24 hours, the city would become a horror movie set, only without a stunt double, without a director, and without a second chance. And there's more. The verticalization of São Paulo is a serious problem in times of chaos. Huge buildings, gated communities with hundreds of residents, broken elevators, crowded stairs, and little or no exit. Zombies would quickly invade the buildings, making each floor a new level of terror. Even worse, many of these condominiums are close to favelas and communities, places where the spread of infection would be almost instantaneous due to population density and lack of control. And it doesn't stop there. The city's underground system, with dozens of kilometers of tunnels, storm sewers, and connected subway stations, would create a perfect labyrinth for the undead to roam freely, away from human eyes. São Paulo would become a true nest of zombies hiding in the shadows. What was mobility becomes a trap. What was a refuge became a prison. While small cities in the interior could isolate themselves and contain the infection, São Paulo would be like lighting a match in a barrel of gasoline. Here, the zombies would have 12 million fresh meals, trapped by the panic and geography of the city. And if you think São Paulo is bad, wait until you see the next city, New York, United States. New York is the ultimate symbol of the modern urban world, and precisely for that reason, one of the worst cities to be in when the dead start walking. The city that never sleeps will turn into a hell that never stops. With more than 8 million inhabitants on the island of Manhattan alone, and an underground subway system that crosses the entire city, New York would be dominated in a matter of hours. And we're not just talking about trapped people, we're talking about lethal traps. Imagine the outbreak starting inside a crowded subway train at 8 a.m. In less than 10 minutes, the virus spreads across 5 different lines. The result? Thousands of infected people emerging beneath the city, using the tunnels as arteries of silent spread. No one would see the danger until it was too late. Anyone who tries to escape will run into the hellish traffic on the bridges and tunnels that connect Manhattan to the rest of the city, all blocked, jammed, and full of panic. And what about skyscrapers? New York is a vertical city. You might be on the 43rd floor thinking you're safe until you hear the elevator brake and the sound of the dead coming up the stairs. Population density in neighborhoods like Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Queens guarantees exponential infection. A single zombie could, in theory, transform hundreds of people in minutes just by crossing a block. There's more. New York is full of densely populated public spaces, such as Central Park, Times Square, and Grand Central Station. All of these would become points of carnage where people, out of desperation, would seek refuge without knowing that they were running straight to the slaughterhouse. And whoever thinks about escaping by boat, forget it. The ports would be taken, and the freezing rivers of the New York winter would make any attempt to escape even more difficult. While small towns could lock down and create resistance, New York would become an epicenter of absolute collapse. The city, with bright lights and vibrant energy, would now be plunged into darkness, filled with screams, blood, and a terror that spreads faster than the sound of a siren. If you are already tense about New York, wait until you see what Tokyo has in store. Tokyo, Japan. Tokyo is a marvel of efficiency, technology, and organization. But all of this falls apart when the enemy is irrational, hungry, and already within the borders. With a population exceeding 37 million in the metropolitan region, Tokyo is the largest urban center in the world, and in the zombie apocalypse, size means vulnerability. Imagine a zombie appearing in Shibuya, one of the busiest intersections on the planet, hundreds of people crossing in all directions. Within seconds, chaos ensues. Japanese culture, based on collectivity and order, collapses emotionally. No one is prepared to deal with an invisible, fast, and merciless threat. Transport systems, which today are a global reference, become channels for transmitting death. Trains, subways, buses full of people trying to escape, but not knowing where. The social respect that previously kept everything working becomes paralysis. And in that lost time, thousands are infected. Another problem is Japanese architecture. Many buildings and houses have thin walls, sliding doors, little real protection against a desperate horde. Zombies could invade entire blocks in a matter of minutes. And with so many cramped apartments, it would be almost impossible to defend yourself, or even hide. Tokyo also has underground drainage tunnels, pedestrian crossings, and elevated train lines. In a normal world, this is mobility. In the apocalypse, this becomes a maze full of deadly surprises. The very warning system that the government uses for natural disasters would be inefficient in the face of a threat that does not follow logic, neither time nor space. While Japan's rural cities could enforce quarantines and shelter in the mountains, Tokyo would fall like a house of cards. In silence, with efficiency and blood, the capital of technology would become a symbol of tragedy in record time. But if you think Tokyo would be a nightmare, wait until you visit the next city, one of the most populated places on the planet, and with an even scarier problem. Mexico City. Mexico City is a true Latin American metropolis, vibrant, chaotic, and overpopulated. But at the start of a zombie apocalypse, all that energy would turn into pure despair. With more than 22 million people in its metropolitan area, the Mexican capital would become a pressure cooker ready to explode. And once the virus spreads, there will be no time to escape. The congested streets, which are already a nightmare on a daily basis, would become impassable. Escape by car, he forgets. Escape on foot, only if it's before the first horde appears. Public transport is one of the most used in the world, but in times of collapse, this efficiency becomes condemnation. Imagine dozens of zombies entering a crowded train car at 6 in the afternoon. You wouldn't even have space to raise your arms, much less react. The spread would be instantaneous, and with a people accustomed to living on the margins of the unpredictable, panic would take hold very quickly. One of Mexico City's biggest problems is its altitude and urban terrain. Many neighborhoods are in elevated areas with narrow access, while others are in flat regions with easy movement, including for zombies, popular and densely occupied. Neighborhoods such as Iztapalapa and Nezahualcóyotl would become extermination zones in a matter of hours. Here, overcrowding is the biggest enemy. Another hidden danger is underground. The city was built on an ancient lake, which means there are thousands of galleries, tunnels, and unstable structures beneath the surface. If you thought about hiding underground, bad idea. This can become a trap with no return, full of infiltrations, without oxygen, and worse, with no way out. While small, Towns in the interior of Mexico could shelter in the mountains or isolate themselves in villages. Mexico City wouldn't stand a chance. It would be like seeing a party full of people being invaded by a hungry horde, and no one has time to react. The collapse would be visual, emotional, and structural. And if all this sounds bad, the next city on the list combines extreme density, suffocating heat, and one of the largest slums in the world. Get ready to experience chaos in its purest state. Rio de Janeiro winter, Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is known for its paradisiacal beaches, imposing hills, and vibrant energy. But at the start of a zombie apocalypse, this wondrous city would become a tropical horror scene. With more than 6 million inhabitants in the capital alone, and more than 12 million in the metropolitan region, Rio brings together all the elements for an accelerated collapse. Overpopulation, difficult access, extreme heat, and mountainous geography that traps people between the sea and the hills. Imagine the outbreak starting in the city center, close to Central do Brasil, one of the areas with the highest circulation of people. Within minutes, the trains would be full of infected people, the buses would be paralyzed, and the main roads, such as the Red Line, Avenida Brasil and Túnel Rebusas, would be completely congested. And then comes despair. Running away is not an option. The sea is on one side, the hills on the other, and the dead everywhere. The favelas, with their labyrinthine structures, narrow alleys, and stacked houses, would be a catastrophe in their own right. Once infected, an entire community would fall within minutes. And the problem is that many of these areas are difficult for authorities to access. If you are within one of these regions when the apocalypse begins, it is practically a death sentence. Another worrying factor is the intense heat. Rio's sultry climate increases dehydration, reduces breathing, and makes any attempt to escape on foot even more exhausting. Meanwhile, the zombies continue tireless. Adrenaline rises, but fatigue arrives quickly. And without water, without food, and without shelter, the end comes soon. And make no mistake, the tourist attractions would also be traps. Christ the Redeemer, Sugarloaf Mountain, the crowded beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema, everything would become a scene of carnage. Many people would think about taking refuge on the top of the hills or in hotels, but they would soon discover that the dead climb and don't rest. Rio, with its enchanting geography, would become a prison of sand, stone, and blood. And if you thought the heat was a problem, wait until you see the next destination, where the weather is unforgiving, and neither are the infected. Mumbai. India. Mumbai is the economic heart of India and one of the most populous cities on the planet. With more than 20 million inhabitants, the city is a constant explosion of movement, noise, and crowds. But in a zombie apocalypse, all this energy becomes fuel for absolute chaos. The population density here is so high that in some neighborhoods there are more than 30,000 people living per square kilometer. This means that when the zombies appear, there won't even be room to run. Imagine the outbreak starting at Chhatrapati Shivaji Station, one of the busiest in Asia. Within minutes, the infection spreads like fire through paper. The scorching heat and suffocating humidity make everything even more unbearable. Streets become impassable, alleys become death rows, and fear spreads faster than the virus itself. Mumbai also has one of the largest slum complexes in the world, Dharavi. More than 1 million people live there, many in precarious conditions, with little access to health, hygiene, and infrastructure. Once infected, Dharavi would become an epicenter of mass contamination with zero chance of control. Whoever was there would be lost. Another problem is the geography of the city. Surrounded by the sea, Mumbai has few escape routes. When the zombies took over the streets, the tunnels and bridges leading out of the city became clogged with people and blood. The heat, fatigue, and panic will make many give up before even trying. While villages and mountainous areas in India could withstand the outbreak, Mumbai would be overwhelmed in a matter of hours. A maze of bodies, screams, and a terror impossible to describe. And if you think that's scary, the next city is even more compact and completely dependent on technology. Seoul. South Korea's Seoul is a city that impresses with its modernity, connectivity, and frenetic pace. But all this dependence on technology turns against its inhabitants at the beginning of a zombie apocalypse. With more than 25 million people in the metropolitan region, Seoul is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. And the moment the outbreak begins, every connection, Every subway line, every public space becomes a living trap. Imagine the first infected people appearing in Gangnam during rush hour. People with headphones, eyes on the screen, walking through crowded streets. Nobody notices until it's too late. The first screams are confusing. Will it be a fight? A robbery? When you understand what is happening, dozens are already biting, contaminating, knocking others to the ground. The rush begins, but where to run? Seoul has a vast underground transportation network, one of the largest subway systems in the world. It seems safe until you imagine hundreds of zombies trapped with you in a dark tunnel 40 meters underground. The escalators stop, the lights go out. The only thing you hear are hurried footsteps and the shuffling of hungry bodies. The feeling of suffocation, claustrophobia, and helplessness dominates. Another dangerous factor is the climate. Seoul has intense winters and extremely humid summers. This means that, depending on the season, escape routes are limited and the physical conditions of the human body are harmed. While cold can paralyze, heat can wear out. The zombies, on the other hand, continue forward. The skyscrapers, the apartments close to each other, the overcrowded neighborhoods like Hongdae and Myeongdong all become perfect stages for tragedy. While small villages in the South Korean mountains could set up barricades and resist, Seoul would fall like a shorted electrical circuit. Fast, silent, devastating. But if you thought the technology here was a hindrance, the next city takes isolation to another level, and ironically, that isolation is what will seal your fate. Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta is an island megacity teetering on the brink of collapse, even without zombies. With a population of more than 30 million people in the metropolitan region, it already faces floods, hellish traffic and pollution on a daily basis. Now add a zombie virus to that equation, and you have the perfect scenario for total collapse. Literally, Jakarta is sinking. Yes, the entire city sinks an average of 10 centimeters per year. This means that in several areas, the ground is already below sea level. In an apocalypse, this feature turns the city into a geographic trap. The lowest neighborhoods would be the first to become uninhabitable, flooded, dark, without power, and full of zombies. Imagine the outbreak starting in one of the street markets, where thousands of people walk around non-stop. Within minutes, the contagion spreads through the cramped alleys. The healthcare system collapses before it even understands what is happening. There are not enough hospitals or trained personnel. Jakarta is one of the densest cities in Asia, and the structure simply does not support mass evacuation. Another critical point is the precariousness of access. The city depends on saturated roads and an overloaded public transport system. There aren't many quick exits. When the dead take over the neighborhoods, there will be no escape. Polluted rivers do not serve as an escape route. Ports get clogged. The sea, which is already advancing on the banks, will impede any withdrawal plans. While Indonesia's smaller islands could close in and resist, Jakarta becomes a water trap with no chance of reacting. An urban cemetery about to be consumed by water and the dead. And if the humid heat of Indonesia seems suffocating, what you will see in the next town is a true cauldron of despair and impossibility. One of the largest cities in the world, where even breathing can become a risk. Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos is the largest city in Africa and one of the most populous in the world, with around 24 million inhabitants and growing rapidly. But this growth comes with a price. Precarious infrastructure, entire neighborhoods without basic access to water and sanitation, and traffic that seems like an impossible mission to escape. Now imagine all of this collapsing under the weight of a zombie apocalypse. The outbreak begins at Balogun Market, one of the city's largest open-air markets. Thousands of people crowded together, screaming, running. There is no way to distinguish who is trying to escape and who is infected. Confusion takes over, and within minutes, chaos spreads to dozens of neighborhoods. Lagos is connected by narrow bridges, which would quickly be blocked, and without alternatives, people would be trapped on urban islands, along with the dead. Favelas, known locally as slums, are a separate chapter. In Makoko, a community built on stilts, there are no streets, only narrow channels. Once the infection gets there, no one escapes. The boats are few, geography becomes a prison, and the virus, which already spreads quickly on dry land, multiplies even faster where space is restricted and resources are non-existent. Another factor that makes Lagos especially dangerous is the heat. The city is hot and humid all year round. This reduces physical resistance and accelerates exhaustion. And unlike cities with cold climates, where zombies might slow down, here they remain active, hungry and dangerous, 24 hours a day. While villages in the interior of Nigeria could isolate and resist for weeks, Lagos would fall in days, or maybe in hours. A time bomb of people, chaos and blood, ready to explode. And if you've found all of this scary so far, wait until you see the next city, where there's simply nowhere to run. Dhaka, Bangladesh. Dhaka is one of the most densely populated cities on the planet. With around 23 million inhabitants and an extremely compressed urban area, Dhaka is a true logistical nightmare, and at the start of a zombie apocalypse, it would become the worst possible place to be. Here, there is no space. People live packed, side by side, in alleys so narrow that two adults can barely pass through together. The outbreak begins in a downtown hospital, and within minutes the crowd is already infected. The city, which already frequently faces real epidemics, would go into complete panic. But the panic here is not loud. He is stuffy, desperate, trapped between concrete walls and heat. People would run through streets that didn't allow for escape. They would climb roofs. They would try to hide in places where there is no privacy, no protection. Extreme poverty combined with minimal infrastructure would create the ideal scenario for viral spread. There are no shelters. There are not enough hospitals. There are no escape routes. And the worst part, the city is surrounded by rivers and swamps. This means that even those who try to escape will end up returning to the same place. While rural areas of Bangladesh would have a chance to contain the outbreak, Dhaka would become a whirlpool of blood and agony, a place where no one sees the way out, because it simply doesn't exist. And in this type of scenario, the zombies don't even need to run. They just follow the sound of despair. These cities are the nightmare of any escape plan. The simple fact of living in a metropolis could be your biggest mistake at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. Highly populated, with structures collapsing under the weight of despair, with no escape routes, no time to react. The truth is harsh. In these places, you wouldn't stand a chance. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these cities do you believe would fall first? Or worse? Which one resembles your reality? Comment below the name of your city and write, "Would I survive here?" Let's see who is really ready. If you've come this far, it's because you really care about your survival, and that already puts you ahead of the majority. So do the following. Subscribe to the channel now, because here you learn, every week, how to escape the chaos when everything collapses. Leave a like so this video can reach more people who, like you, also want to be prepared. And if you made it to the end, comment below. I would survive where no one else could, so I know who the true survivors of this channel are. And it doesn't stop here. Click on the next video that is already appearing on your screen. Let's stay alive together.